start off? I think, don't we have him up first or not?
Correct, yes.
Bring all your, any of you guys up who want to come, by all means.
I'll just point out Sam in a second here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm joined by my boss, Charlie Miller, the chair of the board.
How you doing today?
And also with Sam Leverett. Sam's a senior planner. He works for Maryland Department of Agriculture in our office, and he's kind of my left brain these days. And I'm going to get a little bit more into why that is. But thank you very much for letting us make an appointment. And I want to thank Commissioner Nickerson for coming to our Cooperators Dinner this year. We had a record crowd on a wicked rainy night, but didn't stop them from coming. We just got Brooke Shaw, who's our admin, just put together this newsletter. It hasn't even gone out in the mail yet, so I brought you a preliminary copy. And there's some information about our Cooperator of the Year, some pictures of the commissioner in there presenting the certificate from the county to our Cooperator of the Year, Fabio Turlovich. Had a real nice affair. Hope you enjoyed yourself. We raised a lot of private money to put this event on, and it just never ceases to amaze me the interest in conservation in this county. I mean, agriculture is alive and well, and conservation is doing better than it's ever done. We raised $5,000 for our high school scholarship, so it's kind of a triple bagger there. You've got our budget request. It's for $235,441. This represents a 5% increase over last year. I know it seems a bit heavy, but we give 1% for longevity of our employees and a 3% COLA just to try to keep up. Pretty tough these days. And then other employment costs, of course, that we have no control over. Medicare, Social Security, payroll with ADP, those type of things. I did want to talk a little bit about this document, and Commissioner Nickerson's already seen a preview of it, but this is a document that the Maryland Department of Agriculture publishes every year. It's basically a results document about performance and accomplishments by the 23 soil conservation districts in the state of Maryland. And I'm happy to report that overall we're number 4 in terms of best management practices installed in Kent County. We're number 2 in the number of participants in their Ag Cost Share program. And we're number 1 in their conservation reserve enhancement. These are the buffers that farmers, landowners install, and number 1 in cover crop. 58,734 acres. That's about half of the acres, tillable acres in Kent County get planted to cover crop every year.
How about that?
And that's quite an accomplishment by our farmers, landowners, operators, that type of thing. Nobody else can make that claim except us. So we're proud, and we're proud that you support that effort through our budget request to fill in some of those gaps. I think I'm going to take the bulk of my time to talk about the federal cutbacks that I think you've heard probably every agency and every group come in here talk about, and we're not exempt from it. The United States Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources Conservation Service is one of our 3 partners, and they're our lead partner. They've been with us since 1938, since we were formed. At present, they have employees in our office, they have vehicles in our office, they pay the rent for our office. I mean, they are a significant contributor to our overall conservation effort in the county. Their cost share programs, while the state of Maryland's are significant, they do more. And now it's really, you turn on the TV and it's cuts. We're down to 2 federal employees assigned to our office, and one of them is splitting her time between Kent and Queen Anne's, and the other one is a probationary employment who was sent home once, came back based on the court injunction that was filed, but now is scheduled to be terminated on May the 20th as part of the reduction in force that's in place. So it's not good. We have some temporary employees assigned to our office from other counties who are sharing with us. But in this process, we've already lost 3 position numbers through the feds. So we're never going back. And we're now working with Maryland Department of Agriculture to see what they can do for us. I mean, they have a little bit of flexibility. They have some vacancies around the state. They might move a PIN number to our office, but it's hurting, and it's real, because there's some empty desks in our office now that are not going to get filled, which it also concerns us as well, because the federal government is the leaseholder for our office space. And they pay based on the number of heads in that office. So I can only anticipate that they're going to come back and say, you know what, you don't need this much space anymore, and you're going to have to find a new place. I mean, years ago, this used to be our office right here, before you folks took it over. Who knows where we're going to end up, but I could suspect that that could be one possibility, that we could lose our office, but only time will tell. And I'm not hitting the panic button yet, but just putting it out there. One of the things that the board, last year I presented you with our strategic plan, and it had a lot of things that we were going to accomplish from now to 5 years out. As a result, some of these things may change, and that's one of our asks beside the budget, is to ask for some flexibility in the way we spend the money that you do budget us. Because now we're faced with a situation where we're not going to have some employees, and some of our priorities will change, and it's going to require us to reassign people, reassign duties, take a look at the priorities, and a couple things may fall off our plate that we just simply won't be able to do. So just kind of putting it out there. My role will probably change at some point, depending on what the state does and what position they have to offer for us. And the board's keenly aware of this. They've been meeting regularly to discuss the what-ifs and where we might go in the future with this, because this affects all the districts in Maryland, as well as the 3,000 of them in the United States. It's kind of a big deal. And it won't affect just us. It'll affect our neighbors, the FSA office, right next door to us, because they're on the same lease as we are. They've already lost people as well. So it's tough times in the ag centers in the county, throughout the state and the country. So we're not really asking for anything at this point, other than just to keep what we have with a minor adjustment, but we wanted to put this in front of you that we may need some flexibility in how we spend that money, because we may have to change our operations to accommodate, where the feds drop out, and we have to pick it up in order to meet the watershed implementation goals of the Chesapeake Bay program.
Well, that certainly is understandable.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Exactly. Yeah. We're not going to sit here and cry the blues and say we can't do it. We'll figure it out with what we have, and then we'll go from there. But right now, and I'm Charlie, if you want to speak to it, or Sam, you had some thoughts on that as well.
No, well, as everybody read, it's up in the air. It looks like they're coming toward ag more, filling the position slowly, but we don't really know. A lot of the grants are coming back now slowly. So we're hoping we can get back to normal, but I don't think it'll ever be where it was.
Yeah.
That's probably a safe bet.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
But we do appreciate the support you've given us in the past.
Well, we appreciate what all you all do as well. That's a mutual feeling there.
So, anyone have questions? I mean, we're happy to answer. If not, we'll let you move on to the next agenda item.
I'm like you, we might have plenty to talk about a little further down the road when some of this stuff, we figure out where it's going to go and how it's going to work. But
Yeah. Right now, the smoke's got to clear first.
yeah, that's right.
And then we'll, if we've got something to talk about, we'll be back in touch, and we understand that Commissioner Nickerson's our go-to to do that through him. And then, if we need to come back to a meeting and present, we'll be happy to do that.
We're here pretty much every Tuesday, so you.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. I just want to echo the statements that Robert said about the dinner and how the money that they raise and particularly for that scholarship. And I think he pointed out this book here is a good resource to really see a lot of the meat and potatoes of what these guys do, what the ag community does as well.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers in this book are audited by the state of Maryland. It's not something that we make up. It's field verified. It's real. So.
And it's for the whole state.
And it's for the whole state. So
Yeah.
Be proud that you guys are part of this.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, little old Kent County stacks up pretty good.
And we now have the largest conservation dinner in the state too, because of the private support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
All right. This one ought to be just as quick.
Little old Kent County has a little old superintendent here. I have a theme in my life. So good afternoon, I think it's afternoon, yes? So good afternoon, and let me just start by saying thank you for the opportunity to come and proactively speak with you today. I did have a chance to go back and listen. I was in Galena Elementary classrooms last week when you were all meeting, so I did go back and listen, so I think I have an idea of some of the questions that you may have. So would you like me to just highlight a few things, or would you want to just get into questions and answers?
I think it would be better if you know it better than we do. And
Yes, sir.
if you go through and highlight some of the big issues or the major changes, however you feel.
Okay, great.
If we have any questions, we'll ask during that.
Yes, sir. So let me just take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Mary McComas, Superintendent of Kent County Public Schools. I'm joined this afternoon by our Director of Budget and Finance, Ms. Elisa Stewart. And for those who may be listening or watching, I'm just walking through the PowerPoint that I shared at our Board of Education budget meeting on last Monday, which was April, I don't remember the 14th, I think, April 14th.
14th,
Yes, thank you, just so that everyone knows what I'm referring to. So, gentlemen, if you go to the yellow tab of the presentation, I'm going to cut right to the chase as to why our school system has a deficit why we're looking at a deficit situation. Fundamentally, it is our enrollment decline. So over the last 5 years, we have lost 224 students
In 5 years.
in 5 years. So 224 students, and if you look on the one slide that shows you the bar graph of student enrollment, and if you look to the left-hand column, this is a conservative number of funding that we are not getting because of that enrollment decrease. So at a minimum, because of losing 224 students over the last 5 years, that if we had those students, that would have brought in $3.1 million in just foundational funding, right? And what you see there is the per pupil funding would have been about $2 million, and the compensatory ed funding would have been $1.1 million. Compensatory ed is funding that we get to support students who qualify for free and reduced meals. So we took the average of what that 224 percentage would have been. So you can see here that, you know, our fundamental challenge is that our enrollment is declining and continues to decline, right? If you also look at the other slide that says declining enrollment, you sort of see a graphic. During the last 5 years, we had the benefit of emergency COVID grant funds. Those grant funds were intended to help stabilize school systems during the crisis of the pandemic, and they did that. They stabilized and allowed us to sort of keep things relatively level for students as we were returning from that crisis. Of course, those grant funds are gone now, and so that money that we were using to help sort of keep things level is fully exhausted at this point. So when you take that supplemental funding away, pair it with declining enrollment, that really is the two fundamental reasons that we have a deficit this year. So, you know, if you look at our enrollment, if we had been in normal times, meaning not a global pandemic, we would have naturally been decreasing our staffing little by little over time. But because we had the supplemental funds, we were able to not reduce the staffing in alignment with enrollment. And so, again, those resources are exhausted, and we've now come to really what is the fiscal cliff after the pandemic. And so for us, the majority of our budget is, of course, our personnel. So if you flip to the orange tab, you will see that I am definitely going to be reducing at least 36 positions. We, as you do, approximate a position about $100,000 a position. You know, some positions may be a little bit more, some positions may be a little less, but for general estimating purposes, we estimate a position to be about $100,000. If I have to close the entire deficit through positions, that would be approximately 43 positions in total. which, just to give you a point of perspective, that's like an entire elementary faculty. That would be the equivalent of like closing an entire building. Of course, we're not in that situation. We don't have a building where we could consolidate, and nor would I want this to impact any one school, right? I'm looking to kind of distribute this. The majority of the spaces that we can reduce positions, and I am confident we will be able to sustain quality instruction, is at our secondary classrooms, so our grades 6 to 12. Because of the pandemic funding, we've been able to not reduce staffing, and so we have class sizes that are really small. About, 43% of our
Less than 15 or
yeah,
something? I
yes.
think I read.
15 is the average, right? So there are some classes that are smaller. I know Mr. Wall referenced substituting in one of our math classrooms. That was an advanced placement class where we're trying to build the number of students who are ready to take college-level classes. But we can reduce the positions and increase class size to about 22. Research, and I know, Mr. Price, you referenced the gold standard. Research indicates that class size 18 to 22 is considered optimal for learning. If you start to get less than 18 students, I know firsthand as a high school teacher, it's hard to get activities and discussion going because you almost don't have enough points of view to engage in activities. If you over 22, I routinely taught classes of 27 to 32 as a high school teacher in Harford County. Most school systems that I have served in, class size is closer to 30. And so we've been very fortunate to have very small class size for quite some time. So increasing to 22 is still not unreasonable. Now, will that be 22 perfectly? No. There may be social studies classes that have 27, and there may be English classes that have closer to 18, because we certainly want to prioritize English and math because they're our core subjects. But we have room to increase class size and still sustain quality instruction and appropriate classroom management as well. So, and I'm looking at using, of course, exhausting our fund balance with the exception of the $500,000, that is our board policy. So I'm fully trying to put in everything we can. I will also just say for the general discussion that I went through and I zero-based the budget. So we looked at every single thing in our budget to see where we could trim. We trimmed just slightly over $500,000 from non-personnel items. And just to provide sort of a bigger perspective on that, in the last two years ago, we cut $700,000 from non-personnel. So in the last 24 months, we've cut $1.2 million from non-personnel to try to avoid reducing personnel. But we really are at that place where the only way I can reconcile this is through position reduction at this point. So let's see, if you turn to the pink tab, let's see what I tabbed there for you. And I know, Ms. Heller, thank you for kind of laying this out the other day. How will we go about that? As you mentioned, we are offering a retirement incentive. We are in the process of meeting with those who are eligible to retire and are eligible for this incentive to give them all the information. It's a big decision to make, especially if you weren't thinking about making that decision this year. We have a timeline for them to let us know. It's early. Do you remember? Is it May 1st or May 12th? I forget. We have a date early in May. I think it is May.
Beginning of May.
Beginning of May. And then normal attrition, as you described, people get married, they move away, they relocate for different reasons. And then any of the positions that I need to reduce that are not taken care of through either retirement or other normal attrition, we will go into our reduction in force protocol. All of our associations have that written in as either part of their contract or their master agreement. So there's a whole procedure of how we would go through and reduce positions, regardless of what association. I am looking at reducing positions across the board, so it's not just one class of employee that we're looking at. Now, I will say, and it's evident, the bulk of our salaries and personnel are instructional personnel. And of course, they're expensive. It's not a cheap skill set to teach children. So that is kind of everything in a nutshell. I don't want to bore you with everything, but that's pretty much our context.
Well, the one item that you brought up with I think you've got one line item that has $500,000 in it for, I guess it was contingencies or something, and then there's another one that's got $1 million something in it.
Are you
Million.
referring to the fund balance?
Yes.
So the fund balance has 1.5 million in it. I've already proposed putting $1 million of that towards the budget as well. Now, I can certainly go back and revisit that contingency, but the other 500,000 in the fund balance is per our policy.
Well, that's a little debatable, but I would probably argue that with you, because the problem we used to have, the schools would, there was one time where that 500,000 is in your budget, it was 3 million. And I always made the point of saying, Kent County Public Schools and Kent County government is too little to have $3 million sitting on a shelf somewhere with nothing to do with it. But I hope, for my sake, I hope you spend every dime that you got in that budget. That would suit me fine.
Sure.
And the answer was that it was always, well, in case we have an emergency. We are the place you go to for an emergency. Even if you had $3 million in there, or $500,000, and something comes up, you still got to come back in here and ask us if it's okay to move it out of that line item. So I guess what I'm saying is we want to really be team players and give you access to any of that money that you think you need that's already in that budget.
Sure.
Because it's not going to change the end of your budget, the final budget of last year, because it's already in there. True?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I
So-
agree. So that's what I said. I'm willing to revisit the contingency funds.
As far as I'm concerned, you spend whatever that you need, because we already decided to give that to you last year, and it's in there, and we do the same thing. We'll have a budget where, we make a budget, but we never spend it all. You're always thinking ahead, trying to make sure you cover everything, and you always end up with money at the end of the year. So, but the part about the old argument was, well, we got to have this $500,000 in here in case we have an emergency. Oh, we will be your $500,000 or whatever it is, because as I said, I'm getting repetitious now, but you got to come in here to move that money out of one line item or the other. Anyhow, why not just spend it? It's already in your budget. To me, that's an easy one.
Sure, and I certainly understand your point. I would just also add that, and I know you had talked a little bit about this on Tuesday around recurring versus non-recurring. Our big challenge is our recurring cost. And so that's where our position reductions come in. Because to your point, we can take the contingency fund and the $1 million from our fund balance, so 1.5 put towards it. I was already putting $1 million towards it out of that. I can add the other 500 from the contingency fund. We still have it's our am I saying that wrong? It's our recurring costs
Right.
that exceed, thank you. It's our recurring costs. So they are basically one-time funds. So that still doesn't quite solve my problem. It does help offset it, but it ultimately doesn't resolve the underlying problem, which is my recurring costs exceed my recurring funds, so.
I'm good. No, I think you've done a great job. I commend you.
Well, I appreciate, and I know that, what I'm looking at is not easy for anybody in the community. It's certainly not, what you'd prefer to be looking at, it's certainly not what I prefer to be looking at. It is what it is at this point. I think what matters to me is everyone understands why we're in this situation, what we're doing to try to address that. And again, to me, the more I worked on it, the more it became evident this is about right sizing to our enrollment, because we don't have supplemental funds to kind of allow us to be larger than what our enrollment allows.
And unfortunately, that decline in your population is not going to change anytime soon, at least not that I think. I mean, it's been going downhill for 30, 40 years. I mean, I'm sure that you've heard it and know it, but that high school, when it first opened up back in '73 or something, it had 1,350 students in it. Now it's down below 500, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, that's an amazing decrease in population.
It's tragic in truth, I would agree. I would say, I heard you talking about Millington, so I'm hopeful that there's maybe some housing coming in.
So are we.
I know.
Well, if
but
that
maybe
don't,
we
if
can
that
start to
don't
see
pan
children come
out,
back.
we've all made some bad decisions, I can assure you. I mean, that's our hopes as well, that there's going to be a couple distribution centers out there employing 200 or 300 people, that some of those people are going to want to live there. Hopefully they get, that's what,
Sure.
that's what the vision of putting it there is.
Yeah, that's exciting, so we will stay tuned.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in here, and it's not, I know it's probably the hardest thing you've had to do since you've been our new superintendent. But I appreciate what you and the board have done, and the thought and the process that you guys, I know it's not easy. It's not easy for us either doing, that part of it. But I do think that no matter how we got here, we got to get out of it.
Sure.
That's where I think
Right.
we're at. So.
Right, I'm a pragmatist, if nothing else, and I will say it is what it is, right? And, it will certainly, for those whose positions will be lost, it will be upsetting naturally, but ultimately it has to be done, so.
Well, sounds like to me you've certainly done a great job and took it very seriously, and I think when it's all over at the end, we'll have something to be proud of, you and us as well.
I think I've had the occasion to go over this with you, at least on one occasion, and I was at the public hearing when you presented this to your board members, and again today. I think you have done a very commendable job in trying to right-size this situation. Unfortunately, any grants or any funding that you sometimes get as a result of COVID, and you've said it yourself, there's always a sunset at some point. It's unfortunate, but I too, like Commissioner Fithian, would like to see you exhaust all of the funds that you have available, and please know, and let your board know, that emergency fund, I agree with him, that if you have a problem or an emergency, this is where you can come and you're going to get our total support. But in the meantime, we need to be trimming it down as much as we possibly can, and you've done a very good job in trying to do that. I mean, if I am correct, the blueprint mandate, maintenance of effort, whatever you want to call it, is $815,000. After what you've done, you've got it down to the blueprint mandate and an additional $801,000.
Right, the 801 would be on top of the blueprint, because the blueprint
Right.
funding's already calculated in.
So, we're just trying to get that number down even a little bit more
Yes.
by utilizing what you currently have in your budget, if in fact that's appropriate. And we will be there for you.
I have confidence that you would be. I have the benefit, and while I am new to Kent County, I had the professional experience that in November of 2020, the school system that I worked for at that time experienced a catastrophic cyber attack that completely wiped out the entire school system. And so it was our county government that stepped in and were our partners and helped us get the school system back up on its feet. Made sure people were paid on time and all of that. So I have the experience of when a school system needed that support in an emergency situation, that their county partners came in and followed through with that type of thing. So I believe you when you say that, and hopefully we will never be in that situation where I will need to come and do that. But I hear you and I receive that, so.
Very good.
Quality education is important to all three of us up here as well as your staff. And we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that there is quality education. available to our students here in the county. So we still have a lot of things to look at in the budget, and we have some ideas of how we can try to meet the needs of our departments,
Sure.
to include the school system. So
Well, we appreciate any support we're grateful for, and we will finish working through our process. So we do have our budget hearing coming up. I will be going around talking to all of our faculty members directly in faculty meetings. I have a virtual town hall meeting, changed the date of that to May 1st. And then our board will be voting on the budget May 5th so that I can come here May 6th. So we move that timeline up as well.
and I think in attending your meetings, I think the date that was talked about as far as the incentive for retirees, for those that are eligible and make that choice, I think it was May 12th.
That's probably the case.
So-
I just couldn't remember, but I feel confident that we'll know, we'll have a large, I mean, within a week of May 12th, we'll know. I mean, there may be one or two who come in at that last
And when
minute,
is
but
the superintendent coming back in for the formal
May 6th.
May 6th,
6?
yeah.
so that's what, within,
So you might know then.
Yeah, I think by May 6th, we will have the lion's share of who will be making that decision. There might be one or two who come in at the last minute to say, no, I will take it, but.
How did we've all heard on television about some of the federal funding drying up a little bit. Has it
Yeah.
really affected?
We are fortunate because we do use our funds wisely and expeditiously. So we have really a liability of about $7,900 that we will not be reimbursed for.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
compared to what it could be or what other places are looking at, we certainly can absorb that.
About that.
We are in the process of working with Maryland State Department of Education to make sure that everything is reconciled. We have all of our paperwork and documentation on our end, and making sure that the state has all of what they need as well.
Out of those 36 positions you're talking about that you would be losing, are they all teacher jobs? Or is there,
The vast majority will be teacher jobs. I'm looking at about 36 as teachers, and if I have to go, like the additional 8 would be other positions. But again, I'm going to look at spreading that out across all sectors. The majority of our employees are teachers.
Yeah, sure.
So.
about that? Well, we look forward to hearing back to see how you handle this, but so far it's sounding good to us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate, and I do appreciate the opportunity, you asking me to come in early, because I do have tried to be, and I will continue to try to be as proactive a partner for the sake of the community as I have been, so.
Well, and one reason we like for you to come in early, even if you don't have the final numbers, you have somewheres in the neighborhood. And it's almost futile for us to try to do a budget until we know that your number, because that's almost 40 or 50%. I don't know exactly what percentage, but
Right.
40 or 50% of the budget. So it makes the rest of it easier after we kind of get an idea what your number's going to be.
I certainly understand that, and I appreciate, one of the things Ms. Heller and I talked about is next year we'll kind of backwards map our budget timelines. It's always challenging, as I know it is for you as well, around that legislation date, because who knows what can happen all the way up to the end. But I think, we'll try to coordinate that calendar, I think, a little bit more
Especially this year, when a
thoughtfully.
couple of work days are sectioned off and reserved for Annapolis trips,
Right. Mhm.
which, as we move forward with the middle school funding.
I would like to maybe get some clarification about
Yep.
what was just talked about. The way I understood it, the COVID funds that came into Kent County over like a 4-year period, I guess, was $15,844,000
Yes, sir.
and change. And the 36 positions that you had to consider to eliminate, they're outlined here on this page. I'm assuming,
The,
but they were grant-funded, or funded positions from the COVID
right,
money.
I'm so glad that you asked that. So I do need to clarify, those 36 positions were not funded by the grant. We were able to use the grant to support overall operations. And I don't know, Ms. Stewart, if you want to elaborate any more on that. So these are not, I'm so glad you asked that, because that was one of the things I know was discussed the other day. These were not specific to the grant. So these are general operating positions that we've been able to not trim because we were using COVID funds to pay for other things. So then we were able to keep those teaching positions in place. And I don't know if you have.
That's pretty much what it is. And anything else in addition that was needed for COVID. So in the beginning, making sure that the buildings were clean. There was a lot of custodial things with transportation as well. We used a lot with technology because we were having a hybrid model. So the children were able, I believe we had the buses go out and be like a spot where the kids could come, and if they didn't have internet, they were able to do their work. We had hotspots that we provided. So a lot of that COVID money was tailored to additional funds to help, but if we had anything extra, we were able to kind of use that for operational and even a few personnel to assist with that, with those costs.
Right,
To
so.
maintain.
Right, so we were able to use those funds to cover all those types of expenses, and then we were able to use their funds to help keep our teaching staff at a high level.
So as a result of what you're doing, just for the record, so if the public's listening, classroom size, could you touch on that a little bit, what it's going to do?
Sure, my goal is to really minimize any impact at our elementary schools. I cannot promise that I won't have some impact at the elementary schools, but our own elementary classrooms right now are, they cannot get larger, to be honest. And of course, the younger the child developmentally, you need smaller class size, so a room full of 4-year-olds, you cannot have 34-year-olds in a classroom. So I'm looking to try to reduce the positions, the instructional positions at the secondary level as much as possible. We currently have 43% of our classrooms in grades 6 to 12 have 15 students. Now, that's an average. Some are more, some are less. So with the reduction of 36 instructional positions, we're looking at class sizes in grades 6 to 12 going up around 22 students a class, which is still a very reasonable size. Now, again, that would be an average. So some would be larger, some wouldn't be too much smaller, if I'm being honest. But that's still a very reasonable size. If you look at our surrounding counties, their class sizes in grades 6 to 12 are closer to 30. So we're still going to be in a position where class sizes are not out of control. And here's the truth of the matter. Instruction, the quality of instruction is what drives achievement. Class size is helpful for behavior, but really what matters is the quality of instruction rigorous, and are we attending to our student needs, right? So if Mary needs some extra time and a little extra help, am I getting that, right? Now, that's where people want, people love small class size, and I get, as a classroom teacher, I like small class size. But what we know is instruction really rests on the quality of what's happening in that classroom.
And during one of our meetings, you shared with me something that I found pretty interesting. During the COVID years, our testing and the achievement level of our students
Oh, yes. So if you,
has really spiked,
Yeah.
especially with literacy and math. And to me, it was interesting to see how after the COVID years and we got back to some type of normal activity
yeah.
of teaching, one-on-one, face-to-face, how things have really
Gone up.
spiked up.
It is, and for the other two gentlemen, if you look in your packet, I don't have this one tabbed, because now you've got me on my real passion, which is instruction and achievement. If you go to the bar graphs, the first one's literacy, the second one is mathematics. These are our state test scores over the last 3 years. And what Commissioner Price is referring to, I really like to highlight grade 3, and you've heard me mention grade 3 when I've come before. What is so important about last year's grade 3 and this year's 4th grade is look at the jump in achievement. We see just shy of a 20% improvement
Wow.
in literacy in 24 months.
How about
That's
that?
huge. Now, that particular group of children are the first group that has been back in school since the pandemic. Like, I'm not saying that correctly. They're the first group of students who their education was never interrupted, is what I'm trying to say. And so that's a benchmark group for us as a community, for us as a nation, but for us, I care about us more than, so this is our benchmark group. And so you see tremendous improvement there. That also speaks to the investment we've made in Orton Gillingham. In our literacy approach, we've dramatically changed, and that change came about by using some of those COVID grant funds to provide the professional training to our teachers related to letters, which helps our teachers diagnose when a student is struggling to learn to read. And then Orton Gillingham is a methodology of how to teach reading that is explicit and systemic. And then if you also look at the next chart, I just like for everyone to see the connection here with mathematics. Again, if you look at the 3rd grade cohort, last year's 3rd grade, again, you see a 15% jump in mathematics achievement in a 24-month period. Now, that's largely related to our improvement in literacy, because our math tests today are not just the old, how you might get 10 math problems and you just do the calculations. Math problems today on state tests are the dreaded word problems. So you have to sort through, Mary has 5 red apples and 3 green apples, and Elisa wants, 2/3 of each. How do you do that math? That's the math that our children have to do on state tests today. So they have to be strong readers in addition to having strong computational skills. And so I just like to draw your attention to that. So while we are in a right-sizing budget cycle, please know that achievement is going up. The things that we have invested in with COVID funds are paying off. If you look across the other grade levels, you see these are the cohorts of children who were very dramatically impacted by the disruption in their education. And so we, of course, are striving to build their capacity as well. I always like to highlight, if you look at grade 10, our grade 10 students in English are really outperforming by and large, most school systems in the state. So our grade 10 English teachers out there are doing amazing work, and the proof is there. So thank you for giving me a moment to highlight achievement, Commissioner Price, because that's what I'm ultimately here to do.
Do you know off the top of your head, and it hasn't really got a lot to do with the budget, but what the absentee rate is?
Yeah,
Is it
I don't
constant?
have our current chronic absenteeism. I will say we started off the year very strong. September was very strong. Once we hit the winter months, we've seen chronic absenteeism go up. It is a problem for us. I will say that we are following all the processes to proactively work with parents, to meet with them, put intervention plans in place, and we're working with the judges that deal with truancy. I actually have an opportunity to go and meet with the 2 judges. I think it's like in 2 weeks. I don't remember the date offhand. Just to talk with them about what else can we do? What else can we do to make sure that our students are getting to school? I mean, we pick them up. There's a bigger challenge around chronic absenteeism that we've got to figure out what's the root cause of that.
Because I've heard on the news, they talk about it over on the Western Shore in some places. I mean, it's high as 30 or 40% that.
Yeah, ours is
Chronic
not that
absenteeism.
high. I will get those numbers to you, and I'll also get to you the one numbers that I had on the tip of my fingers last week in our presentation, and I didn't review them today, was where students are going, because I know when I first arrived in the county 10, 11 months ago, I know that there's people who have chosen other schools as opposed to Kent County Public Schools because of rigor. And certainly I know we've gone through a period of time where there was a lot happening with our schools. What I found in the data, though, when I actually analyzed the data over the last 3 years, the vast majority of our families that are leaving the school system are leaving to move. They're moving to other counties, or they're moving out of state. And I just bring this up because we do have one category of withdrawal is unknown, and they tend to be our students who have passed the age of 18 and they're just not attending school. And if they don't attend after so long, we withdraw them. And so that's how that's connected to the chronic absenteeism. But I'll send Ms. Heller those numbers so that you can see them for yourself.
I was just curious, but I mean,
Sure.
thank you.
My pleasure. Well, have a good afternoon, I think, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
You the same. Thank
if
you
not
so much.
sooner. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
All right, do you or Trish you got anything you want to say, or? Okay.
I feel like I could give the presentation myself.
Not my job.
I will just say that I really do think that Dr. McComas is, as they say, turned over every penny 3 times before she spent it. And it's a gut punch to think that somebody's going to lose their job. You know, I mean, that's just a really terrible reality. But as she said to us last week, that I think I'm right. Well, the 15 million. I mean, that's what kept us afloat during COVID. And had we not had sort of that safety net that probably, I don't want to say misled us, but you kind of, I don't want to say we took it for granted, but, you know, at some point we weren't going to have it anymore, and otherwise we would have been chipping away at the loss of students. The one thing, and I was telling Mr. Matthews, is that really shocked me last week, it was in her presentation, to find out that I thought it was 71% of the 234 kids that we've lost in the last 4 or 5 years didn't choose a private school. They literally moved out of Kent County. Now, I'm not going to say that some of that wasn't as simple as going over the Chester River Bridge and getting into Queen Anne's where they think they're getting a better education, but there are other factors than education that drive people to move. So we're all connected in some way. So I am speaking only for myself, but I think Mr. Rhodes would say the same thing, my fellow board members would say the same thing, that Dr. McComas and Ms. Stewart have done an amazing job of trying to spare, to be as gentle and kind in what is probably the hardest thing we're ever going to have to do. And we don't have the big ticket items anymore. You know, we closed 2 elementary schools a couple of years ago. We reconfigured the bus contract. The only other thing we have now is the 89% of our budget that's made up of people. So.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say is Dr. McComas has dealt a tough situation. I think she's doing a great job. Everyone's doing the best they can. I do know that I think COVID is going to be a major problem for us going down the road. There's just no way, in my own opinion, speaking for myself, that's sustainable. I think we can manage on our own because they're going to force our...
You mean blueprint?
Or the blueprint, that's what I mean. Excuse me. It's just going to force our hand, and I just don't think that's going to work. And in regards to the teachers, I had someone come up to me today and goes, I hope I don't lose my job. And I was just, it's sad. You know, it's just sad to hear that coming in. There's a lot of positions are going to go. And I just think we just got to work through it. And you've got a tough road ahead, but we'll make it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anyone else? Dan, how are you doing?
I'm just fine, sir.
Just fine. Taking it in, right, Dan?
Yes, sir.
You know, I guess I'm just sitting here wondering, I mean, we see what the budget has presented this year. And we know, and look, the blueprint, I think the pillars in the blueprint are good ideas. But according to the estimates that we've seen, I have to agree with Frank. I don't know how we're going to be able to fund the blueprint consistently for the next 10 years. The numbers are just too big. And I would encourage everyone next year during the session in Annapolis to try to get someone to listen to, not necessarily pause it, but readjust it, reevaluate what Maryland's trying to do is a good idea. I'm not criticizing the idea. But the problem is that there's no money available. And it's just not Kent County, it's throughout the entire state. You know, all the superintendents throughout the state are struggling. The counties are all struggling with the funding required. And we all want the best education system for our kids. But financially, the state of Maryland just can't afford it county-wise. So I would encourage everyone to kind of talk to their colleagues, colleagues and their elected officials who represent us in Annapolis to try to do what we can to try to minimize the blueprint cost. Because next year is even going to be worse than the years after, unfortunately.
All right, thank you all. What's up next, Pat?
So I think the closed session.
Yeah, closed session.
For personnel. So, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session under the Annotated Code of Maryland General Provisions, Article 3-305B1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. We expect to discuss individual requests for compensation and reclassification of certain employees.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The